What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to Mile High Misfits. So we have another episode today with the Mustang. I know that it's been a long time since you guys have seen Ryan and the Mustang. He's like your dad from back in the day. He went to go get some milk, but instead of going to get milk, he got a supercharger. So that's super exciting, but we're gonna put some headers on today. We got these long tube headers from Flashark, just like the Corvette. So we're gonna show you guys how to install those.
So we identified on the Flashark headers that the surfaces aren't very flat, and we're going to work on them. I bought this file to help deck the surface to make it a little bit better, and we're going to use some spray paint to be some redneck Dykem. That's what they use in machinists to make sure stuff like this is flat. So yeah, we'll show you how this process goes.
Okay, so Ryan's been working on this for probably 30 minutes now. As you guys can see, this is all worn down, but you still have some low spots here because obviously the paint hasn't been touched. Same with this spot here and here. So you can kind of see like around this area, this would be a leak. So you just kind of want to make sure that all the paint's ground off and it's nice and flat. And then we're going to do it again, and we're just going to sand it down just to make sure that, double check ourselves that everything is as flat as possible.
So we're going to do a little test bench here with these sticky notes. We're going to blow air with the vacuum through one of the ports, and then we're going to see if the sticky notes get sucked down by the ventriloquist of the air of the collector here. Oh. Kind of neat. So where the pipes all meet at the collector, it's putting a low pressure zone where the other pipes are connecting. So that's what actually causes the suction on the motor to actually add power when you have long tubes versus when you have stock manifolds. So after about 2 hours of us both sanding on both of these, we went through that process a couple times. We used a Sharpie to mark where the gaskets are going to sit, just to make sure where we care about is actually flat. So now I think we're pretty much done. As you can see, they're not nearly as, well, you can't really tell, but they're not nearly as warped as they used to be. And now I think they're ready to be installed into the car. For budget headers, you see our vacuum tests, and now that they're flat, I mean, I don't really have that many concerns about them working. I think it was a good deal.
All right, first things first, Ryan's gonna get the car up in the air, and we are going to drop the subframe.
We're going to take the calipers off because I don't want to bleed the brakes later. And then we're going to start removing the struts, and then we'll have to move on to hanging the motor. So if you come in here, I have this sick 20-year-old braided brake line, and we're going to take the caliper off with the 2 bolts here. I believe they were a 13 millimeter. And then we got to take the Coney yellow shocks out.
All right, so brake calipers are off. We are working on getting the strut out. And what we're going to do is we're going to jack up the control arm here, so that way the spring here doesn't just shoot out and kill somebody.
So we just got back from Lowe's. I spent $50 for a single E8 socket. That's a external Torx for the ABS sensor here. Don't be like me and buy a $50 set. Go on Amazon and buy an eTorx socket so you can take the ABS sensor out.
So the socket size that you want to use for the strut is a 13/16.
And then don't forget your collars if you have them. Now we're removing the sway bar. Oh, I don't have your microphone.
So this bolt and the nut underneath are both 9/16. And now we're removing the ABS sensor.
We pulled the spring out. I had to push down the control arm while Gabe pulled the spring. And then there's this little hole here that you won't notice. And up in there, there's the motor mount that we had already loosened. It's a 21 millimeter socket and a wobbly and a 1/2 inch impact to get that off. And then we'll show you the other side assembled. So this is the other side assembled. Some people can use a ratchet to get this nut off, but for us, it was just easier to take the spring out and use an impact. instead of taking the hoses off the power steering box, or the steering box, we're going to take off the line here and then the one at the cooler here, and then drop that all with the K-frame. Oh, good, thank God. I need a 2-rear K-member. Let me know in the comments if you guys want to give me one. Oh yeah, it's coming off. All right, so up to this point, we've got the springs out, the sway bars removed, the brakes are removed, ABS sensors out, the power steering's disconnected, the engine, I guess, bracket, bolts, whatever, engine mounts. The nuts are removed, and we've got the harness, the engine bar, not harness bar. If you were normal, you would be using this bolt on the timing cover and then the parallel bolt on the other side of the motor. We don't want to remove the supercharger, so I just wrapped it around the whole supercharger bracket. I'll let you know if that was a mistake. Hopefully it's not. Now that we're getting ready to loosen the K-member, we've got two 15mm bolts on the back here and two 18s on both sides of the car, and then there was also a cross member that we removed that went from here to the same bolt on the other side, and those were a 15. We removed this cross member just so we can have a jack on the bell housing, just to make us feel a little bit safer. Since we've got the motor hanging by chains, we just didn't want any problems. And then we've got a second jack on the K-member, ready for it to drop. We're going to put these back in so that way, if it tries to come down, it'll get caught, but the bolt's loose.
All right, chronological f***ery here a little bit, but don't forget to undo your steering shaft here. There's just basically one bolt here. It was a 13mm, and basically you just have to tap it off from there. We were lowering this K-frame here, and it started binding up on this, and it made it a whole huge mess. So make sure that you just take this off first. It's going to make your life a lot easier. Don't be stupid like us.
There it is, it's free. Wow, that's actually really good.
All right, here we are now. The cross member is down. So now we just have to pull it out. And as you guys can see, we have a great view of the manifolds. So we're gonna spray some PB Blaster on those and let them sit overnight. And then we'll get back to you guys tomorrow morning. It is the next day now. We've got Marshall here. What is this, a crossover episode? And it is time to get the f***ing stock manifolds out and put in our brand new Flashark headers.
That's why I was so excited to get this job, because this shit won't stay together.
Oh, wow, it's been apart recently. It's amazing.
So that's a step you guys might not have. That is removing the wideband sensor. Then you'll also want to remove your O2 sensors. You guys probably will have something a little bit different than these. These are aftermarket cat delete pipes, but we took those off. Then we also took off the O2 sensors and the wideband sensor. So now it's time to hit those bolts on the manifolds. They've been sitting with PB Blaster on them for probably about 15 hours now. So we've also got the special Mauska tool if we need this. We're heating up this EGR pipe because we already know that this one's gonna be a pain.
Ooh, ooh, ooh.
We're recording.
Ooh,
Bro, Marshall, we're recording this.
ooh.
Yeah, okay, there we go.
Boy, look, it's a boy.
So these are the Amazon wobblies that I bought specifically for this job, but I've done this job about 6 times because my exhaust keeps coming loose. You need specifically this 15 to get off this stud. There's no other way, and it sucks. All right, so at this point we test fitted the headers, and we're gonna go through and pull the EGR out because it's kind of in the way.
So what we're doing is we're gonna pull out this bracket here. That's gonna allow us to pull the EGR piping straight out. So we already have it undone here. And then we also have it undone at the bottom of the car, obviously. So we'll show you guys how to pull that out.
That's off. There we go. Okay.
How many electrical connections were there on that?
Two. So we have.
Oh, and then we also
there.
have this one in the back here.
Can you reach that one?
Yeah, let me try it.
Oh, I got it.
There we go.
And two. That's it.
How many hoses were there total on that?
1, 2, and then these two are 2 for 1. So
Cool. All right, so this is what you need to remove to pull out your EGR piping. And then obviously you have to undo it from the manifold at the bottom.
Success.
There we go. Just had to massage it a bit.
It was in the car like this, and there's 2 vacuum lines coming up down by the firewall, and then they come up to the bottom of that sensor, right?
mm-hmm. These both plug in on the back of that bracket that we took off.
So the way we're doing this is not the correct way, I guess, technically. So we cut this guy off. This green one is completely unnecessary. Cut that one off. And then we're just going to basically get a bolt and then just plug this guy. Some people will delete this entire section, but then you have to make sure that you run your fuel pressure regulator correctly.
The correct way is to pull it out of this sensor and unfeed this hose. But because this car's old and crusty, I'm afraid of breaking all of the stuff that matters. So to avoid that, I'll just plug this, and it just won't be as pretty.
So yep, there we go. Bolt in there to plug it up. And now we can move on to the next thing. We should also mention that a long time ago, we actually made a block-off plate in here. You can kind of see right there, there's a block-off plate. So if you are deleting this, you're either gonna have to put a plate in there or plug this up somehow, just so that way you don't get any leaks. All right, now that we have this bolt undone up here, we're gonna kind of twist this around. We put some PB Blaster on it, and we're just gonna try and work it so we can slide it out. We gotta be very careful because a lot of people complain about snapping these off, and then you don't have a dipstick tube anymore. So we don't wanna do that. We're just gonna finesse it, massage it, and eventually, hopefully we can get it out. All right, wiggle it. We definitely got a little bit of a gap now, but we just have to be careful with it. Oh, there she goes. Keep going.
Don't stop.
Don't stop, Daddy. There we go.
The piece de resistance.
Can you believe it?
The O-ring looks real good.
That oil's got 4,000 miles of hard abuse on it.
There you go.
Thanks.
Yep, guys, this is something that you really don't want to lose. Just keep working it, guys. It'll come out. You just got to keep massaging it, just like most things on these old Fords. So now that we have the headers where they're going to sit, we're just feeding the dipstick tube in just so we can fit it in exactly where it needs to be.
It is hitting the motor mount, though.
What does it need to do to not hit the motor mount?
Grab a hammer.
All right, guys, so this is the passenger side. As you can see up here, the motor mount was just barely hitting this side of the header. So we hammered it in just a little bit, gave it a little dent, just so that way we're not vibrating on anything. Nobody wants that. But besides that, it looks pretty good. Looks like it fits pretty decent. I think that the height that it's at is not too bad. We also had to remove the starter to get this in there. So it just made it a little bit easier just taking that out of the way. But we put the starter back in and there's plenty of room right here now for it. So we test fitted that. So honestly, fitment does not look too bad with this. So we did find one issue here. As you guys can see, the O2 sensor spot is hitting the floor of the car. So we physically cannot put anything in there. So what we're gonna have to do is we're probably gonna have to drill a new hole, probably on the inside here, and then weld in a new bung. And then we're probably going to either dent the floor of the car or cut this off or something, weld it shut. Just that way it's not rubbing on anything. But yeah, the good thing is that on the other side, it's completely clear, as you guys can see over here. Yeah, there's no problem on that side, but on the passenger side, we will definitely need to do some adjustments. So right here is where we're gonna drill the new spot for the O2 sensor. So we have that marked, and we're gonna drill it with this step drill here. We're gonna do a 7/8 hole so we can fit this guy, and it'll just pop in right there. And we've got the miller over there. We're gonna weld it in, and then this one should be good to go. Quick and easy job. We got the new bung on. So now we need to figure out what we're doing with this. We're gonna have to plug this up and then probably hammer the floor of the Mustang in just a little bit, just so we have some clearance, and then we can put it in the car. As you guys can see, we're under the car again. We have some clearance for where the O2 sensor bung was. We basically just ground it down and then welded a cap on it.
So up around the motor mount.
All right, she's captured, but I haven't been able to spin it yet.
All right, so to get this passenger side header in, we had to remove the starter. I took off this tin thing off the engine mount. You probably want to replace that while you're here. I didn't. And then as far as modifications to the header, we had to make a dent to my floor here because they put that O2 bung in the wrong spot and it's gonna rub. And then we had to add O2 bungs on the inside where they should have put them. And then we had to ding the header to dodge the engine mount. And then you're going to have a really hard time with this back upper bolt. Or no, it was this one. This one was ass. I'm upside down. We had to have a really short stubby wrench. One person puts it on the bolt and one guy puts his arm down from the engine bay to tighten the nut. And that was the passenger side. It took, what, Gabe, like 2 hours? 3 hours? Yeah. Just to get this one on?
Now that we're moving on to the driver's side, we are going to use the bandsaw to cut this off. Obviously, you guys saw that we are deleting the EGR, so having this is completely pointless. So we're like, we'll just get it out of the way. So we're going to use this bandsaw here, slice it here, and then we're just going to basically weld it back up.
Very nice.
The driver's side is mocked up. We just ran this new steering shaft in here, and you can see that that's where the EGR valve or the EGR pipe would go. So we just cut that and welded it. So that's all sealed off now. We just have 2 nuts on it right now, so it's a little loose. Basically what we're gonna do is we're going to route the oil dipstick tube through here. We want it to be a little loose because we're gonna have to kind of finesse it a little bit to get it in, but we'll show you that once it's done.
We just got the dipstick in. What we did was we took the motor mount off with these 4 or 3 bolts with your 2 ground straps. They go to the engine. Those come off, the engine mount's off. Then you have room to get the dipstick into the hole. You get the dipstick in. I put the motor mount back on. That way I knew I didn't do it wrong. And then I took a pair of vice grips and crimped these real lightly against the lip that's on the dipstick. So I had the vice grips like such and the pry bar against the base of these. And then I was able to just hit the back of the pry bar with a hammer and get the dipstick just to go in the hole. Here's the bolt for the, focus please. The dipstick tube. It was originally flush, but since there's thickness to the manifold now, it kind of stands off. I'm just gonna shim it up with some washers behind it or something, instead of bending it and breaking my dipstick tube. So
there you go. You guys can see we've got a shim in there. We just put the bolt back in for the dipstick. So it's solid, it's mounted, and now Marshall is putting the nuts in for the headers. So we're tightening up the last of the nuts here. These ones are a lot easier to reach on the driver's side than the passenger side, so you guys shouldn't have too much of a problem getting these ones as long as you have 1/4 inch with a 13 long socket and a stubby wrench. The 13 stubby wrench is a lifesaver on this job, so make sure you guys get that.
So now it's day 3. We've got the headers installed and bolted up and modified for what we understand. One thing that we're gonna have to do today is we're going to have to build the mid pipes, because on the passenger side, there's a gasket here. And they didn't provide us with anything to go from the headers to the cat back. So we're gonna have to build that today. We're gonna get the K member cleaned up and get it installed into the car.
All right, so we're building the mid pipe, and we've got ourselves a non-ideal situation. I needed my wideband bung, after my narrow bands. So we had to cut off the pipe here, so we had a mating surface. I'm gonna cut off a section, try to make it look as good as I can to go from my Mac tube to my new mid pipe. Then, because Ford hates us, this side originally has a gasket up there, so I don't have a fitting for that. So I'm gonna have to cut off the fitting here and weld an extension to this to get to the header. So definitely not ideal. You just do what you can with what you got. So.
So we have this side bolted in now and all welded up. Now we're test fitting this other side. We already cut off the other flange there, so that way we can connect it onto this side. And now we just have to weld things up and get things cut.
Yeah, that looks good to me. I think if I cut that line that I just put on there,
Yeah,
it would fit perfect.
just cut it a little bit here and then we
Yeah.
can...
And then it'll be a big gap on the top again. But it's on the top this time.
True, yeah, so it'll look great. She ain't pretty, but she'll work.
All right, so now we're putting the O2 extenders that I got off Amazon into the car. We are only doing that because otherwise, when you have the stock exhaust, obviously this length is fine, but when you go to the long tubes, it is not. So we're gonna put those in there and let you know if these work.
And we've also got the wide band as well that we're gonna put back in, so.
And these are a 22 millimeter. They don't need to be crazy tight. They'll find their way to rust in anyways.
Well, look at that, guys. The exhaust is finished up. We got the O2 sensors in. Everything looks like it fits really well after some minor massaging. I got the subframe all cleaned up and power washed, so we're not gonna have dirt and crap falling in our eyes. So now Ryan is gonna give one last little check to make sure that all of the nuts on the headers are tight, just because we know we are not coming back here for a long time. So we used jacks on both sides to lift from the back, and then we just used this transmission jack to jack it up from the front. So now, before we get anything bolted up, we're gonna check to see how we can, or if we need to clearance the headers. We might have to put a ding in them just to make sure that the K-frame fits perfectly. And then we also want to bolt up the steering shaft as well. So we want to get that done before we start bolting it up. Okay, so we have the subframe up. And as you guys can see here on the driver's side, this pipe rubs on the subframe a little bit. You can see that the bolt holes are a little off. So what we're gonna need to do is we're gonna need to lower the subframe and basically get a hammer and hammer that section in just to make it fit a little bit better. We really don't need much, but obviously, you know, you can't get the bolts in if it's rubbing on there. So we're gonna pull this back down and we'll start hammering. All right, update. We used the 2-hammer method here, and we just hammered a dent into it. I think that should be enough to give us some clearance on this guy. So we're gonna put it back up there and see how it fits. So to get the steering shaft on, you guys can see, we just had to slip it over that shaft there. So what we did is we kind of have this halfway up, and then we put a pry bar on the back of the shaft right there. And then so what we did is we just got a hammer and just real easy tapped it on, and then it slid over the shaft. So now we're just gonna put the bolt in it, and then we can raise this the rest of the way up. So we have the front K-frame jacked up now. Ryan's just tightening up the steering shaft bolt. We have the header clearanced, and now on both sides, the motor mounts are in, and the holes are lined up for the bolts on each side. So at this point, we're just gonna bolt it back up, double check everything, and then we'll start putting things back together. Everything is bolted up now. We have the main bolts in, and we've got these bolts down here in, and we also have the motor mount nuts on. And now we're just hooking up the power steering lines again. So besides that, guys, it is pretty much the exact same process that we started with, only in reverse. So it's gonna get really tedious if we show you guys the entire thing again. So we're just gonna bust this out, and then I will just basically skip forward to once this is all done, and we'll show you guys the first startup. Look at that, it is all put together now. Ryan is re-hooking up the battery. We got both sides done now. So before we put the wheels back on, we are going to fire it up, give it a listen, and we're leaving the wheels off just that way we can see if there's anything that's, you know, out of place or making noise. We can check it a little bit easier with the wheels off. So here it goes. Give it some revs. Oh yeah. That added a lot of low end. Yeah, it did. The butt dyno says 20 horse. Woo! Holy shit! Woo!
All right, so we just finished the first test drive of the Mustang. Runs way better, a lot more low-end torque, but we did have one problem with the power steering line the high pressure line that comes from the rack and then goes up to that hose that we took off, whatever. There's a plastic O-ring that's on it that we didn't know about. We assembled and then it started to leak, so then we replaced it. Gable put the link somewhere. Make sure you have more than one because the first one broke when we installed it, and then the second one was better. So definitely buy multiple. They're cheap and they're necessary if you disassemble the high pressure line the way we did. But other than that, the Flashark headers, although they did have some fitment problems, I'm really happy with them.
Well, the car is home now, guys, and as you can tell from that video that I just took, this thing shoots mad flames and it sounds so good. We love it. And honestly, as far as fitment issues, there was a couple, but honestly, if you want to save some money and you're okay with just working with your hands a little bit, this could be a really good kit for you. And we're going to show you down here real quick. They do change color a little bit when they get warm. They kind of blue a little bit, which honestly looks pretty cool. But yeah, I mean, honestly, guys, this kit is super sweet, and it really cleaned up the sound of this car. But there you have it, guys. That's how to install the Flashark headers on your 99 to 04 Mustang GT. But if you guys have any questions on the kit itself, leave it in the comments below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have. But that's all for this week. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel for future content. I'll catch you guys next week. Later.